Part 4. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 31. Yes, it's me, Qin Xian nodded. I also heard that you started looking for me, and I also know your life experience, otherwise I wouldn't have sent Shadow Demon to recruit you personally. Feng Yun however humbly bowed down. How can I help Senior recruit me personally? Just because of your loyalty and his obsession and hard work towards the realm of martial Dao, Qin Xian smiled. The two of them didn't speak, just lowered their heads. Okay, I won't say much more. Then he said to the shadow demon on the side, these two people will be handed over to you first. Please wait until their strength reaches martial venerable before they come back. As you command, Master. Qin Xian waved his hand, and the three of them appeared in the Blood Sect Hall again. Sure enough, this senior's strength is extremely terrifying. Could it be that he is the legendary martial saint? Haid was shocked and confused. Shadow Demon looked at Haid's expression and chuckled, don't think too much, the master's strength is something you can't guess. You just need to remember one thing, you can do what you should do, and don't do what you shouldn't. Then can you tell us the identity of our senior? The master's identity is the master of Profound Heaven Sect. Profound Heaven Sect, the two of them had never heard of this sect. This is for you. Two rays of light flew into the palms of Gale Wind and Feng Yu's hands. I wonder what this is, Gale asked, looking at the elixir in his hand. This is the breaking sect pill, which is used to break through the martial section. Since you have surrendered to me, I naturally have to give you some good things. Let this be a meeting gift for you. Shadow Demon waved his hand, as if Pozong Dan is like a piece of candy in his hand and can be discarded at will. But this is a fact. Qin Xian gave Shadow Demon 20 Emperor breaking pills, 20 Zone breaking pills and a large number of Spirit pills. Thank you so much, Lord Shadow Demon. Shadow Demon nodded and said, now that you have obtained the elixir, you can make a breakthrough here. I'm here to protect you. The two of them were not polite, and immediately sat cross-legged, swallowed the Pozone pill and began to break through the Wuzong. Half an hour later, the spiritual energy in the hall gathered into a vortex, slowly approaching Feng Yun and Gale Feng. Feeling the nearby spiritual energy, the two urged their skills to absorb the spiritual energy vortex. Swish! A large amount of spiritual energy filled their bodies. A gate seemed to appear in front of their eyes. The gate slowly loosened, and then a large amount of spiritual power turned into a giant. The giant pushed the gate with both hands. Boom! The door was pushed slowly, but too slowly. The giant wanted to push it forward, but it couldn't be pushed, as if the door was stuck by something. At this moment, a golden light was injected into the giant. This was the Pozong Dan. The Pozong Dan turned into two giant hammers. The giant took the giant hammer in his hand and hit the door hard. With a bang, the door made a harsh sound. But luckily the door started to move, and the giant used the second hammer again, boom. This time the giant used more strength, and the door was pushed halfway, and the door could be opened halfway. But the giant holding the giant hammer seemed to be exhausted. He knelt on the ground on one knee, holding the giant hammer with his hand and trying not to let himself fall. Outside, Gale sweated on his forehead and sighed, can't we still break through after all? Is it my talent that's holding me back? This is indeed the case. Feng Yun on the other side has opened the door and is dealing with the next thunder tribulation. Just then Shadow Demon walked to his realm and patted him on the shoulder. Boy, the martial Dao realm itself is very difficult to break through. With your talent, you really can't break through. These words made Haid feel a little depressed, but the next words made him regain his fighting spirit. But you are different. You have reached the half-step martial arts level with a low-grade posture. This is enough to show that you are extraordinary. Since you are not talented enough, let me help you. As soon as he finished speaking, Shadow Demon slapped Gale on the back with his palm. In an instant, the giant outside the gate picked up the giant hammer and stood up. Shadow Demon had just transferred 50% of the spiritual power to Gale. This spiritual power made the giant cover his body with a layer of armor. A warhorse slowly appeared under the giant's feet, with its cloak flying. The giant stepped on the warhorse, holding a giant hammer in his hand, and galloped forward. Boom. The first sound. Boom. The second sound, bang. The third sound. The door couldn't withstand the force and shattered. The door shattered with a bang, and the giant rushed over on his horse. He rushed through the door and pulled the reins like a divine general. Outside, Gale opened his eyes and looked up into the sky. A large number of lightning flashes came out of Gale's eyes, like thunder dragons trying to bite people to pieces. I will definitely break through Wuzong this time, Gale shouted and rushed high into the sky. Click, click, boom. Huge thunder struck toward the Gale. Hate directly carried him down, and the lightning instantly paralyzed Hate's body, making him almost fall down. Ah! Gale screamed in pain. Yufen here has broken through the half-step martial sect and become a real martial section at this moment. The Blood Sect has gathered a large number of people. These people were all Blood Sect disciples, elder protectors, and close followers of Gale. They all heard the thunder, and they also saw Gale rushing high into the sky, and they were alone with the thunder and lightning. Is the sect master going to become the legendary martial sect? A protector said excitedly. It should be, but it's not that simple. Now the sect master is suffering from thunder tribulation. Once the thunder tribulation is broken, the sect master will naturally become a martial sect, an elder muttered upon seeing this situation. What will happen to the sect master if the thunder tribulation cannot be withstood? A disciple asked curiously. If you don't bear it, the sect leader may be lucky enough to survive, but if you are unlucky, you will die. Ah! This disciple felt a little scared, but he remembered that the sect master prayed to their good hands. Sect master, you have to work hard. I believe that the sect master will succeed. Everyone else prayed too. You have to endure it. Marshal Deo's peak state is still waiting for me. How can I fall? The numbness and pain all over his body made Hate look ferocious, but he gritted his teeth and persisted. Lord Shadow Demon, can Gale be able to withstand it? Fen Yuan looked at Gale's face and asked worriedly. Shadow Demon shook his head and spread his hands and said, how can I know this? This is a tribulation that cannot be stopped by humans. Moreover, he broke through with a low-grade qualification. This process will be much more difficult. The power of thunder tribulation is also higher than that of ordinary people. The thunder tribulation must be powerful. This is why low-grade qualifications are destined to fail to become a martial arts master. If you look through the history books, you can see that there are very few profound heaven continent people who can become martial arts masters with low-grade qualifications. By doing this, Hate can be said to be going against the will of heaven. Oh, so what should I do? Fen Yun sighed and shook his head. Damn it, why doesn't this thunder tribulation stop? Looking at the thunder clouds above, Gale cursed angrily. Thunder clouds seemed to hear the roar of the wind, and all the thunder slowly gathered into a thunder dragon. Click, boom. A thunder dragon came straight into the Gale. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 32. Ah! The thunder dragon turned into a large amount of lightning and instantly swallowed up Hade's body, causing his face to twist and his body to become numb. Looking in the distance, I saw thunder and lightning in the thunder clouds constantly pouring into Hade's body, as if he wanted to electrocute Hade alive. No, this is a thunder dragon. Shadow Demon below looked at the scene in front of him and frowned. This is a brontosaurus that only appears after breaking through the martial venerable. Hade's current physique simply can't handle it. What should we do? Fen Yuan asked anxiously. Shadow Demon did not answer and murmured alone, the Thunder Dragon will gradually devour a person's soul until the soul is annihilated. I never thought that he would attract the Thunder Dragon. At this point, I can only use you. A silver-white bead appeared in Shadow Demon's hand. If you look carefully, you will find that there is a lot of space power inside the bead. This object is the space orb. This was given to him by Qin Xian. After all, with Qin Xian's strength, this bead was of no use to him. It would be better to give it to the current Shadow Demon. Shadow Demon now wants to use the space law in the space orb to help Gale resist the Thunder Dragon. This space orb is the same as the time orb used by Ling Gu last time. They both have the power of law, but the time orb is the most difficult to obtain, which is why Ling Gu is heartbroken. There are only 3 types of orbs of time, orbs of space, and orbs of thunder and lightning on Profound Heaven continent, among which the orbs of time are the most difficult to obtain. You must know that only by reaching the Martial Emperor realm can you have the power to control the laws, but the space orb allows you to control the power of the space law, and using the space orb does not require spiritual power, as long as it is used by individuals. There are 2 ways to use the space orb. One can be used to escape, but who would be stupid enough to use the space orb to escape, unless the Martial Emperor Martial Saint is chasing you. The second usage is the one used by Shadow Demon now. Although I am not rare for such treasures, not everyone can use them. I hope you will not disappoint my expectations for you, Shadow Demon murmured, then crushed the space orb with his palm, and instantly the space in the orb was the power is attached to the palm of Shadow Demon. Shadow Demon aims at the high-altitude thunderclouds to release the law of space. The next moment, a huge space gate appeared above Gale, and a large amount of space power surged in the space gate as if it wanted to jump out. Lei Yun seemed to sense the danger and released a Thunder Dragon at the door of space. But the Thunder Dragon was swallowed up by the power of space in an instant. After the space gate swallowed the Thunder Dragon, it seemed that it was still unfinished. A large amount of suction force appeared in the space gate, and the high-altitude thunderclouds were sucked in one by one, including the thunder and lightning on the wind. The few remaining thunderclouds wanted to escape, but it was already too late. Hundreds of space gates instantly appeared around the thunderclouds. A large amount of space power was released, and the thunderclouds were instantly disintegrated. But because of the power of hundreds of space gates, cracks began to appear in the void, and space turbulence appeared one after another, but it could not harm the people below. Gale, who was in mid-air, opened his eyes, felt his own power, and released a space crack in front of him. Perhaps because he had just broken through the instability, the space crack only opened 5 centimeters. It seems like I need to get familiar with my own power, Hayate murmured. Then Gale put away his spiritual power and appeared in Zongmen Square in a flash. At this time, everyone in the blood sect in the square cried bitterly when they saw that their sect leader had become a Wuzong. Sect Master, you have finally become a martial section. Your 10 years of hard work are not in vain, the old man below wiped his tears and said happily. Wuzong is not my end, Gao Feng shook his head and smiled. I have to thank someone else for becoming a martial arts master this time. If it weren't for him, my transcending tribulation would have been much worse. Then the sect master must thank this person. I will naturally thank him. I have already thought of the reason for my gratitude, Gale nodded and then said seriously, from now on, my blood sect will surrender to him, including me. Ah! The old man looked surprised and said, Sect Master, isn't this inappropriate? This blood sect is your hard work, just leave it to others. Gale Feng smiled and said, the blood sect is my hard work, yes, but when I established the blood sect, it was just to break through the Wuzong. Now that I have broken through the Wuzong, the blood sect is useless to me. Besides, he helped me advance to the martial sect, let alone the blood section. Even if it means my life, I can give it to him. Gao Feng is a passionate person, otherwise he wouldn't be chatting with someone like you Feng. Seeing his sect master say this, the old man couldn't persuade him any more. He also understood what kind of person his sect master was. Then he bowed his hands and retreated. Then Hayat spent nearly half an hour talking to the sect's senior officials about the blood sect's preparation to surrender to the shadow demon. "I've said what needs to be said, please step back," Gale waved his hand. "Yes, sect master," everyone bowed their hands and then retreated. After they left, Shadow Demon and Feng Yun, who had just broken through Wu Zone, appeared next to Gale. Shadow Demon patted his shoulder and said slowly, "The blood sect does not need to be handed over to my hands. You can continue to be your sect master, and everything remains unchanged. After all, with my strength, the blood sect can't help me much. Giving the blood sect to me will cause some unnecessary things to happen. You can save a lot of trouble by continuing to act." After a moment's pause, Shadow Demon continued, "What's more, others don't know that you have taken refuge in our Shadow Palace. Now you too are members of the blood sect, but secretly you can become our Shadow Palace's informants." The two thought for a moment and nodded. Seeing them nodding, Shadow Demon finally said, "Well, I don't need to tell you more about the rest. I will come to you if anything happens." After saying this, Shadow Demon disappeared from the spot. After Shadow Demon left, the two looked at each other, and then laughed, with a fierce fighting spirit in their eyes. "Old man Feng, do you still remember the agreement we made?" "Of course I remember," Feng Yun nodded. "Today we have all broken through the Wuzong, and the original agreement will begin today. I've been waiting for your words for a long time." Swish. The two figures appeared in the void. Blood-red spiritual power emerged from Gale's body, and he narrowed his eyes and looked at Feng Yun opposite him, saying, "Come on. Let me see how strong you are after breaking through the Wuzong." "As you wish." As soon as Feng Yun finished speaking, countless spiritual swords appeared on both sides, and the Feng Xiao sword slowly appeared in his hand. Whizzing. The two came close to each other in an instant and started fighting for dozens of rounds. The green-blue spiritual power and the blood-red spiritual power seemed to be falling like two meteors. Boom. 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 A few hours later, the two of them were vomiting blood and kneeling on one knee. "Sure enough, there's no winner between you and me," Feng Yun said with a smile after taking a pill. "That's natural. After all, you and I are not much stronger. It's normal for us to be tied." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 33. Tianyuan Mountain, Profound Heaven Sect. In the Palace of Profound Heaven. At this moment, Qin Xian put his hands behind his back and looked at Ling Gu, the two people below, and chuckled, "Thank you so much, Elder Ling. Without you, my disciple would not be able to avenge this revenge, and would even be in a life-or-death crisis. You're welcome. Since I have become an elder of the sect, I will naturally settle this matter for my disciples, not to mention that this is your disciple, the sect master." Ling waved his hand. "Okay, don't be polite. I am a person who knows rewards and punishments clearly. I will remember you for your great contribution this time." Then Qin Xian asked, "By the way, my disciple, you used the time orb to save her?" Ling nodded, "Yes, it was indeed used. The situation was urgent at that time, and I didn't have time to think too much, so I could only use this thing. Anyway, this thing is of no use to me now." Seeing what Ling Gu said, Qin Xian pondered for a while and then said, "Orbs with laws are very rare, not to mention the time orb that is the most difficult to obtain among the three orbs. What do you want this time? If I have it, I'll give it to you." After hearing this, Ling lowered his head and was wondering what he should want. After all, his current strength has not yet returned to Martial Venerable, and anything that is too powerful will not be of any help to him now. He also has no shortage of martial arts, and elixirs. As a lone martial venerable in his previous life, he can be said to have learned everything. After thinking for a moment, Ling Gu said, Sect Master, anything that is too powerful will not be of any help to me now, so it is up to the Sect Master to give it to me. Qin Xian touched his chin and said, well, that's good. In that case, how about I promise you 3 conditions? I don't know what you want. As long as these 3 conditions are within my ability, you can mention it. These words made Ling Gu standing below flash his eyes. To be honest, Qin Xian's words could be said to have spoken out what was in his heart. In his opinion, even all kinds of treasures could not match Qin Xian's 3 conditions. He didn't dare to mention it just now because he was afraid that he said too much. Now that Qin Xian said it himself, he can be said to be very happy. He resisted the excitement in his heart and said, I listen to the Sect Master. Qin Xian nodded. In fact, Qin Xian knew what Ling Gu wanted to say, and also understood that he did not have the courage to mention it, so Qin Xian raised it for him. Anyway, for him, it was just 3 conditions, as long as it was not too much for him, all acceptable. Then Qin Xian looked at Shangguan Xianfeng, who was in a daze, and said softly, Xianfeng, do you have anything to tell me? Ah! When she heard Qin Xian call her Shangguan Xianfeng, her pretty face was stunned for a while, then she lowered her head and said, Master, I have nothing to say. Really not? No, Master, really no. Shangguan Xianfeng smiled and waved his hand. Seeing that Shangguan Xianfeng didn't want to talk, Qin Xian didn't continue to ask. She would tell herself when the time came. Then you go back to your room and rest first. I want to talk to Ling Gu about some things within the sect. Yes, disciple, resign. After Shangguan Xianfeng left, Qin Xian didn't ask Ling Gu about Shangguan Xianfeng. Today he has to explain important matters within the sect to Ling Gu, which is related to the future development of the sect. Then he said to Ling Gu, Elder Ling, the reason why I won't let you leave is because I want to tell you something about the sect. Sect Master, please speak, Ling Gu said respectfully. There are too few strong people in Profound Heaven sect nowadays. There are only a few people at the upper level, but there are 20 or 30 people at the middle and lower levels. So I have to give you an important thing this time. What's the matter? I'm going to let you recruit some disciples with good conduct. The sect currently only has 500 disciples, which is too few. I'm going to let you recruit disciples first. This is one of them. Qin Xian paused for a while and then said, the second thing is to see if there are any homeless independent cultivators on the way to recruit disciples. If there are any, then recruit them. Of course, this is just what I asked you to do. After all, there are some geniuses who are not strong enough and don't want to show their faces, so you need to handle it according to the situation. Ling Gu nodded to express his understanding. After all, in his opinion, the current sect is indeed developing too slowly. It is only supported by a group of strong men, which will lead to a lack of competitiveness among the disciples. In fact, with the current strength of Profound Heaven sect, there is no need to go to such trouble. There are aristocratic sects everywhere in this world. As long as Qin Xian sends a strong man of the martial sovereign realm to go to the family and exaggerate about how powerful his sect is, the aristocratic family will definitely agree to send all the master disciples in the family to the sect. But Qin Xian did not do this. In his opinion, the disciples of the aristocratic family have always lived a life of arrogance and domineering without worrying about food and clothing. Joining the sect is of no use to him. Only the independent cultivator from the outside can interest him. Of course, except for like Xiao Ran. The reason why independent cultivators are independent cultivators is because they have no background, but they can improve themselves with their own hands. Naturally, their personalities will change accordingly, becoming cruel, murderous, and ruthless. This kind of person is what Qin Xian needs now. He likes people who climb from the bottom to the top. This is why Qin Xian wants Shadow Demon to recruit Gale. As long as Qin Xian asked Ling Gu to promise some benefits to the independent cultivator, he believed that the independent cultivator would definitely agree. After all, they did not want to become an independent cultivator with no background. They also wanted to join the sect and become a superior person. They did not want to be like Yin Hook. Like mice living in the darkness. In the future, Qin Xian hopes that his disciples will compete with each other, and the middle and lower level elders will compete with each other to obtain high positions, rather than relying on connections to gain high positions. In this way, he can allocate positions among the senior leaders of the sect in the future. Now the sect has more than a dozen empty mountains where no one lives, and the main hall of the sect is also extremely empty. This makes him feel too bored sometimes. What he thinks about is what he saw before his eyes were all the powerful senior sects, instead of the one or two people they had now. Thinking of this, Qin Xian said to Ling Gu again, I will let Qing Xian Qingfeng follow you to learn more about this matter, and Xiao Ran will also go over to help you complete the recruitment of disciples. Ling nodded but felt something was wrong. He thought for a while and said, Sect Master, why don't you call Wu Huai as well? Now he is also the guest elder of the section, how can we let him eat for free? Qin Xian laughed for a while after hearing this. Humph, you kid, Qin Xian nodded with his hand and cursed with a smile. Of course he knew the relationship between Ling Gu and Wu Huai, and then waved his hand. Go ahead and tell him about this, I'm too lazy to get involved in your affairs. Okay, Sect Master, if nothing happens, I'll stand down. Ling Gu lowered his head and cupped his hands and walked out of the hall without waiting for Qin Xian to say anything. Qin Xian didn't care when he saw this. He was relatively easygoing towards his own people. Of course, except for big things, he would not care about small things. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 34. There is a small courtyard on the unnamed mountain. A big man with a fierce appearance in a grey robe is lying on a chair leisurely eating spiritual fruits and drinking spiritual tea. This man is the elder who was named Keking. Wu Huai. Since he became an elder, the sect didn't ask him to do anything. He found a sect mountain to practice by himself. He enjoyed the sect's monthly salary every day, and occasionally had the opportunity to go out to teach the sect's disciples. It is said that true Marshal Huai has fallen in love with this kind of life. He doesn't have to do anything every day and can practice with spiritual stones. Because Qin Xian has increased the sect's salary a lot, otherwise Wu Huai would not be able to live such a life. Wu Huai stretched out and moved his muscles. This life is really good. You don't have to fight and kill, and you can control people. Why haven't I discovered this sect before? Otherwise, there's no point in using it as a tribute to the royal family. Just when Wu Huai wanted to eat the fruits on the table, a Daoist figure stood in front of him and looked at him with smiling eyes. This made Wu Huai's hand holding the fruit froze in mid-air. He couldn't accept it, nor could he take it. Looking at Wu Huai's stunned expression, Ling Gu chuckled and said, Elder Wu, your days have been quite leisurely recently. For it. Wu Huai's throat squirmed and he swallowed. He immediately stood up and waved his hands with a smile, no, no, how can I be so leisurely? Then he gave the chair to Ling Gu, scratched his head and said, why don't you just take a break after practicing? Ling Gu sat up without any courtesy, looked at him with his legs crossed and said, this time the sect master has a major task for me to do, and Master Xiao will also go there. As for me, seeing that you have nothing to do recently, I came here to discuss this matter with you in person. Xiao Ran was made the peak master of Elixir Peak by Qin Xian and came to refine elixirs for the section. In fact, he was Qin Xian's personal alchemist. How about it, are you going or not? Ling Gu looked at him with a smile. Humph, this isn't a discussion, it's clearly force. Okay, Wu Huai muttered to himself. However, I only dared to say this in my heart, and then nodded helplessly in agreement. Okay, let's leave without further ado. Immediately, Ling Gu opened the space crack to look at him and asked Wu Huai to follow him. Wu Huai knew that Ling Gu had broken through Wu's zone, otherwise he would not be timid in speaking. Ling Gu was restored by Qin Xian with a large amount of spiritual power, and his strength was restored to that of Wu Zong. This was Qin Xian's reward for thanking Shang Guan Xianfeng for that incident. Wu Huai first put all the spiritual fruits on the table into the space ring and then followed him slowly. Outside the mountain gate of Profound Heaven Sect, Xiao Ran closed his eyes, folded his arms and leaned against the huge spirit testing stone. Standing next to him were two brothers, Li Qingxian and Li Qingfeng. There are also 4 accompanying disciples. A space crack appeared outside the mountain gate, and the fluctuation of the airflow made Xiao Ran open his eyes. The 2 people who walked out of the crack were Wu Huai and Ling Gu. I've kept you waiting for a long time, Ling Gu said with a smile and cupped his hands to everyone. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. The 4 disciples had never seen a strong person from the Wuzong, let alone the elders of the section. Their status could not bear it and they quickly waved their hands. The 2 brothers just smiled and nodded in response. Okay, there's no need to talk nonsense. Completing this mission is the key point, Xiao Ran just replied coldly. Ling Gu smiled and made no suggestion. He knew Xiao Ran's identity, and this was something he could not afford to offend now. Not to mention Xiao Ran's strength, Xiao Ran was 1 level higher than him in terms of Sect status. Xiao Ran would only behave like that in front of Qin Xian, and he was very cold in front of outsiders. But Xiao Ran has the strength and is cold. He is not pretending. Although his current strength is at the peak of martial spirit, he has a large number of formations and elixirs that can kill you. With his identity as Son of Fortune, the entire Profound Heaven Sect, no one except Qin Xian can suppress him. Then Xiao Ran waved towards the sky and a huge spiritual boat appeared in front of several people. This shocked Qin Xian, Qingfeng and the 4 disciples who had never seen the world. Wow, Elderling, what is this? Li Qingfeng asked curiously. Ling Gu laughed and explained to everyone, this thing is called a spirit boat. It is a travel item in the Profound Heaven continent. The spirit boat is divided into 4 levels from top to bottom, Heaven, Earth, Xian, and Yellow. If I wasn't blind, our sect's spirit boat should be at the profound level. It can block the spiritual attack of the peak Wuzong. Yes. Xiao Ran on the side nodded and said yes. This object was forged by him using a large number of rare spiritual objects, but he did not complete it alone. He also forged it with the help of Qin Xian's spiritual power. If Xiao Ran wants to complete the spirit boat at the peak of the profound level by himself, he must at least reach the martial sovereign in strength. This is the minimum requirement. This is because he has relied on thousands of years of experience in his previous life. If it were someone else, he might not even be able to build a boat. No. Wow, our sect is so powerful, Li Qingfeng's eyes lit up. Seeing that they were still chatting, Xiao Ran glanced at them and said, okay, let's go quickly. Before anyone could reply, he boarded the spirit boat alone. Seeing this, Ling Gu and the others stopped talking and followed him. The spirit boat at the peak of the profound level is dark brown in color. In the middle of the spirit boat stands a sail about 100 meters long. There are small palaces in front and behind the spirit boat. There is a large open space to the right of the sail, which is about enough to stand about 1,000 people. There were huge wings on each side of the spirit boat, but now the wings began to shake, and the boat slowly flew into the sky. The spirit boat passed through the snow-white clouds and stabilized at an almost certain point. On the spirit boat, Li Qingfeng stood beside the boat and looked down. The Sky Empire Palace was in front of him. It seemed that the entire empire was very small. When Li Qingfeng wanted to see the position of his sect, he was blocked by snow-white clouds. Qing Feng Li's small face showed a look of helplessness as he walked towards the bow of the spirit boat. At this time, Xiao Ran was sitting on the bow of the boat with a serious expression, then opened his eyes and slowly exhaled. The entire spirit boat is controlled by him. Now that the spirit boat has stabilized, he no longer needs to control it. He only needs to turn the direction wherever he wants to go. This is incomparable to the yellow level spirit boat. Master Xiao, where do you think it is more appropriate to recruit disciples now? Ling Gu, who was standing aside, asked. Xiao Ran thought for a while and said, the territory of the four great emperors is definitely not advisable. Let's go to the western regions. Originally, Xiao Ran wanted to go to the eastern domain, but after thinking about it for a while, he felt it was inappropriate. The forces in the eastern domain were complicated and recruiting disciples there might cause trouble. It's different in the western regions, where elegance is the main thing, and the people here are relatively kind. We listen to you, Ling nodded. He also knows that among the 5 domains, only the western domain is the best place to recruit disciples, followed by the northern domain, and then the southern domain. The eastern domain is the worst, and is also called the place of chaos by the world. Needless to say, the central domain, it's hard to get along even if you're not in the Wuzong realm. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 35. Da. A handsome man ran quickly in the dark forest with a woman in his arms. Swish. 3 green sword blades aimed at the handsome man in mid-air and struck him. Damn it, seeing this, the man activated Law Treasure, and a magic circle instantly appeared behind him to resist the blow. However, the magic circle only lasted until the second blow and then disappeared. As a result, the man was hit in the back and hit a tree. However, he gritted his teeth and stood up again and ran away again. Humph, this kid is really tough. He won't die even if he is hit by my sword. The leader of the 4 in mid-air was a little surprised when he saw that the man was not killed, and then snorted coldly. A person next to him said disdainfully, so what, he doesn't have much strength to run after being hit by this blow. We just need to wait until he is completely powerless. You're right, keep chasing, the 2 people behind him agreed. Several people used their spiritual power to catch up again. The man on the other side had already run into a valley. At this time, the woman in her arms couldn't bear to see the blood stains on the corners of the man's mouth and the cold sweat on his forehead. A pleasant voice sounded in the man's ears, Brother Lin, put me down. They are chasing me, you came to kill me, there is no need to implicate you. Before they catch up, you can put me down and run alone. How can that be done? The man who was on the run refused directly when he heard this. Then the hands hugged each other tighter, and the physical contact made the woman blush, but then she shook her head. Brother Lin, you have helped me many times. I can't let you help me this time. Everything is life. There is no need for you to accompany me to death. The man didn't speak, but the speed of his legs and feet already determined his answer. Finally, the 2 came to a cave. There were no weeds around the cave but only huge rocks. The traces of the nearby fire did not hide the fact that someone had passed by here. The man seemed to be familiar with this place. He slowly put the woman down and pulled her with him. Her hand went into the dark cave. After half a stick of incense, the 4 of them had arrived nearby. A thin man looked around and asked, they should have entered this cave. An old man in grey robe next to him nodded and said, it should be. Otherwise, where else could they go? After listening to what the 2 said, the leader touched his chin and thought for a while before saying, leave 1 person standing guard outside to prevent them from plotting anything. You 2 follow me inside. Okay, head of the family, the 3 of them responded. In the end, the old man in grey robe stayed outside, and the remaining 3 people walked into the cave. In the cave. Brother Lin, where are you? I think you seem to be familiar with this place, the woman walked in the cave and looked around, wondering. The man shook his head and said, I don't know where this is just a place where I lived temporarily before. Oh. The woman nodded and then looked at the wound on the man's back, feeling a little distressed and said, Brother Lin, is the wound on your back okay? Do you need Linger to bandage it for you? She didn't say it was okay, she said it hurt a little, but she still waved her hand and said with a smile, no need, Linger, this little injury can't hurt me. This wound does look very scary, but it won't cause much harm to him. In a few days, the wound will slowly heal. The most important thing now is that more than half of his spiritual power has been consumed. The strength of the following people is all in the martial sovereign realm, and one of them is still at the peak of martial sovereign, which is what he is worried about now. Even so, the woman still insisted on bandaging his wound, and it took 3 rolls of white cloth to wrap it up before she stopped. This makes the man's tough face reveal a hint of softness, which is why he will fight to save the woman. The woman's name is Xueling, and the man's name is Lin Tian. This Lin Tian is exactly the Lin Tian who was teleported to the eastern domain by Qin Xian. Now his strength has reached the martial spirit 7th layer. As for why he is so fast, it is because he was chased by the monster in the martial king realm when he was teleported here. After 3 days of running away, he picked up a corpse. I got a book of profound rank peak body and martial arts and 3 bottles of spirit pill. After another day of training, his strength increased to the martial spirit 2nd layer. Finally, he decided not to run away, and used the Detangsuan sword technique to kill the monster in a desperate attempt, and obtain the beast core in the martial king monster's body. After swallowing the beast core, after half an hour of training, his strength reached the martial spirit 5th layer. As for Xueling, he rescued him from a group of men in black when he walked out of the monster mountains. Then Lin Tian touched the wound on his back, looked at Xueling and said softly, okay, Linger, let's go quickly. The group of people behind should catch up soon. Xueling didn't show any pretense, so she hummed and the 2 of them walked deeper into the cave again. It took nearly half an hour for the 2 of them to walk into an empty and dark hall. There is a dark black sarcophagus in the center of the dark hall. There are 12 iron chains connecting the sarcophagus. There are 8 stone pillars around the sarcophagus. The tops of the stone pillars are burning with dark fire. From the outside, it looks like they are sealing something. Brother Lin, where is this place? Xueling looked at the sarcophagus in the center with a puzzled expression on her white face. Hearing this, Lin Tian shook his head and said, I don't know what this place is called, but when I came here before, I found that the structure here looked like a cemetery. I just walked around and didn't look carefully. Xueling nodded and asked again, Brother Lin, what are we doing here? Lin Tian looked at her and said, I want to set up a formation here. With our current strength, no matter how we escape, they will eventually catch up, so we might as well fight to the death. Xueling heard this and nodded without saying anything else. He knew Lin Tian's character. Lin Tian has a calm personality and is good at thinking. This is a method he came up with after weighing the pros and cons. After all, the strength of martial spirit cannot outperform several martial sovereigns. If it weren't for the support of his body skills and Tianqianju, he would have been overtaken long ago. Then 8 formation stones appeared in Lin Tian's hand. He waved his palms and threw them around, and then carved formation patterns on the ground with his hands. Lin Tian also obtained the formation stone in this cave. He was not the only one in the cave, there were many other caves. Lin Tian also accidentally walked to a cave at that time, opened the mechanism, and obtained the formation stone. Methods for drawing stones and hundreds of formations. After a cup of tea, the formation was finished, and the 3 people behind also found this place. The leading middle-aged man stood in the air and looked down and said coldly, Xueling, you can't run away now, can you? The 2 people behind them had spirit weapons in their hands and looked at the scene coldly. The corners of Xue Ling's mouth below moved and she wanted to speak, but Lin Tian stopped her. Lin Tian said softly, "Xue, please stop talking." Xue Ling nodded. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 36. Then Lin Tian walked closer and pointed at the middle-aged man and shouted angrily, "I didn't expect that the Li family of Black Cloud City would be so shameless and go to great lengths to catch a little girl. Even the head of the family and the elder came. You guys, do you want to save some face?" The big man behind the middle-aged man's expression changed when he heard this. "Boy, look for." Before he finished speaking, he was stopped by the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at him and shook his head. Seeing this, the big man could only snort and return to where he was. The middle-aged man walked down step by step with his feet in the air. When he reached the 5th step, Lin Tian's face began to turn gloomy because he felt that this man was putting pressure on him. When he reached the 6th step, the middle-aged man stopped and looked at him with a smile. "Boy, your name is Lin Tian, right?" Lin Tian raised his eyebrows and couldn't figure out what kind of medicine this person was selling, but he nodded yes. "How about we make a deal?" Lin Tian frowned and said, "What deal?" The middle-aged man pretended to think for a while, and then said, "What level is the skill you are using? Give it to me, and I can consider letting you go." Then he looked at Xue Ling behind Lin Tian and said, "Of course the woman behind you can't leave." The middle-aged man said this because he was interested in Lin Tian's skills. After all, Lin Tian had so much spiritual power to use with his martial spirit strength. It must be because of the skills. The skills he used for Psi profound rank high grade. After all, it is too difficult to establish a power in a chaotic place like the Eastern Domain. The Li family was established after hundreds of years of hard work. Huh, Lin Tian snorted in his heart and said to himself, "I'm afraid the transaction is fake, but it's true if you fancy my skills. But the appearance still needs to be done. Then what do you want to bring out? There's drama." The middle-aged man smiled secretly and said, "I said just now about the transaction that I can spare your life, but the woman behind you cannot leave." Lin Tian frowned and said coldly, "Are you sure you're not kidding? It makes no difference whether you do this transaction or not. I'm afraid you won't let me go if I hand over my skills to you." Seeing that his thoughts had been expressed, the middle-aged man did not hide anything and said directly, "I originally wanted to bluff you, but I didn't expect that you still have some brains." Then sigh. "Sure enough, I still have to do it myself." As soon as he finished speaking, hundreds of sword blades appeared next to the middle-aged man. "If you die under my attack, your life will be in vain." "Humph, it's too early to be happy." Then Lin Tian took 10 steps back with a wave of his hand. Swish! A monster appeared in front of the middle-aged man. Before he could react, the monster rushed towards him and knocked him against the wall. "Ah!" The middle-aged man coughed twice and said angrily, "Boy, you are looking for death." But he calmed down and thought about it carefully, and shouted to the 2 people who were still stunned, "Break this formation first, don't be in a daze." The 2 came to their senses and fought monster. Boom! 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 The monster was instantly killed without even taking a breath. Seeing this scene, Xue Ling below said nervously, "Brother Lin's formation seems to have been broken." Lin Tian held her slender jade hand and shook his head. "Don't worry, this formation is not that easy to break." As soon as Lin Tianhua finished speaking about the formation, 2 more monsters appeared. This time, the group was caught off guard again and was knocked into the wall by the monster. The middle-aged man who was recovering from his injuries was shocked when he saw this scene. "This is the myriad monsters formation." But then he shook his head, "No. No, This shouldn't be the myriad monsters array, it should be a smaller version of the 100 demons array or the 1000 demons array. This Lin Tian is a genius. Not only does he have the blessing of top skills, but he is also assisted by a large number of law manifestations. I'm afraid that in a few years, he will grow to a level that I didn't expect. The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed slightly, and a vicious thought arose in his heart, no, this son must die today. If he doesn't die today, my Li family will disappear from this world in the future. If we kill this boy today and seize his skills, then my Li family will definitely soar to the sky. On the contrary, if we lose today, then... The middle-aged man shook his head and stopped thinking about this. Then he shouted to the two of them, Li Rong, Li Wu must kill this son today, otherwise my Li family may suffer disaster. The two also knew the difference between Lin Tian, nodded to each other, took out a blood-red pill and swallowed it. In an instant, their eyes began to turn red, and their auras continued to converge. After a breath, the two of them desperately destroyed the monsters in the formation, killing one when one appeared, two when two appeared, and so on. Xueling outside the formation frowned and said to Lin Tian, Brother Lin, they seem to have taken something to increase their spiritual energy several times. Lin Tian nodded and clenched his fists, I saw it. No matter what this elixir is, we must not let them break the formation. Then he squeezed the spell with both hands, and the number of monsters in the array suddenly changed from 5 to 6, from 10 to 20, and all the monsters became violent. This kid is going to fight hard, I have to take action. The middle-aged man stood up and swallowed the same blood-red pill. A spiritual sword appeared in his hand and he rushed forward with red eyes. Boom! 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 There were cracks in the 8-panel formation stone at the beginning. Not good, Lin Tian said secretly when he saw this scene. Xueling next to her was also a little nervous and scared when she saw this scene. She was not afraid of dying herself, she was afraid that Lin Tian would die for her. Brother Lin, why don't you let me control the formation? You can escape before they break in, Xueling took Lin Tian's hand and said. Lin Yun firmly shook his head and said no. Ling don't worry, I have one last move. As long as they dare to break the formation, they will all die here today. Lin Tian has the Wuzong full strike card that Qin Xian gave him that day, which is why he can stay calm at all times. But, Brother Lin, Xueling thought Lin Tian was lying to her and kept begging Lin Tian to leave quickly. Lin Tian knew that Xueling thought he was lying to her, so he hugged Xueling with both hands and patted her back to tell her not to worry. Ah! Xueling's face turned red, and she wanted to break away, but she didn't want to. This feeling of hug gave her a mysterious sense of security, which she had never felt before, as if this matter could be solved by leaving it to Lin Tian. Good. Ling don't worry, you will be fine, and neither will I, Lin Tian's gentle voice sounded in Xueling's ears. Xueling nestled in Lin Tian's arms like a kitten. The formation here has been broken, and the three of them looked at the two with murderous intent. Lin Tian asked Xueling to hide behind him, and he was going to use Wu Zong's full strength to get stuck together. Squeezing Hu Zhong Guangtuan, to be honest, he was a little reluctant to give up. After all, Wu Zong's full blow could destroy even the strongest Wu Zong masters, but today it was used in the hands of these people. Just as Lin Tian was hesitating, the chains behind him made snapping sounds. A pair of rotten hands stretched out. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 37. Boom. 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 The sound of breaking chains resounded in the empty hall. A black figure burst out of the coffin. Ah, what a wonderful feeling, I haven't felt this comfortable for a long time. The black figure took a deep breath of spiritual energy and enjoyed it. Several people outside the main hall looked puzzled when they saw this dark, monster-like man. The black figure felt someone outside looking at him, turned his head and smiled at them. hello. I would like to ask, what time is it now? This smile that he thought was beautiful looked a little scary in the eyes of others. The middle-aged man didn't care about this. He held a sword in his hand and asked him, "Who are you?" The black figure frowned and looked unhappy. Dark eyes stared at him, and a death-like voice sounded in his ears. "I hate it when people talk to me like this. You are the first and the last." As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man's body exploded and turned into pieces on the ground. This. Li Rong and Li Wu were frightened by this move and kept retreating. The sword in their hands trembled and fell to the ground, making a snapping sound. The sound of snapping made the black shadow turn his head to face them. A cold voice sounded in their minds, "I feel the same aura as this guy in you, are you together?" "No. No," the two waved their hands quickly, and finally knelt down. Senior has nothing to do with us." Haiying snorted coldly, "I hate it when people lie, and they lie in front of me." The next moment, their bodies began to explode, and the stench of broken corpses emanated around Lin Tian. Xueling next to her felt like vomiting when she smelled the smell, and quickly covered her nose with her sleeves. The black shadow's expression was cold and did not change at all, as if the few people just now were like trampling a few ants to death. Then, the voice of the black shadow sounded in the ears of Lin and Tian, "You should be more knowledgeable than those people, tell me what era it is now." Lin Tian frowned, and a ball of light appeared in his hand. This was Wu Zong's full blow card. Lin Tian also hates others talking to him like this. The black shadow narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw the ball of light. There was something in it that made him feel dangerous, and then he changed his words without the cold voice before. He smiled again and said softly, "I'm sorry, what I did just now may be a bit rough, please forgive me." This sudden change of conversation made the two of them look at each other in shock. Lin Tian put away the light ball and said, "It's okay. You just happened to help us kill these people. I have to thank you." Oh Haiying raised his eyebrows, "So, I did a good thing." Lin Tian smiled and nodded. "Ha ha. I wonder, little brother, can you tell me what time it is now?" Lin Tian did not refuse and said, "Now is the profound heaven continent, the heavenly palace calendar is 93,200 years old." The black shadow frowned and murmured, "Has it been so long? I have been sleeping for 3 whole epochs. 3 eras? Is this shadow a person from 3 eras ago?" Lin Tian on the other side showed an expression of surprise and confusion when he heard this. You must know that 3 eras are a full 300 million years. No one would believe this. Even a pig can become a martial emperor in such a long time. Xueling's ice blue eyes behind Lin Tian lit up, and she stuck her head out to look at the black shadow, feeling as if she had found the same kind. Then Haiying didn't think about it anymore and expressed his gratitude to Lin Tian with a thank you etiquette. "You're welcome," Lin Tian waved his hand. Then he asked the black shadow, "By the way, senior, what you just said is true?" "Of course, I came from 3 eras ago, but I was sealed by a few strong men." The black shadow nodded and said yes. "Seal?" Lin Tian showed a curious expression and expressed what he was thinking. "Then I wonder how powerful you were, senior, 3 epochs ago." This time, Haiying was stunned. He had just woken up, his memory was a little fuzzy, and he had a somewhat embarrassed expression on his face. He shook his head and said, "I have been sleeping for too long. I don't know how strong I was before. I don't know how the current strength is commensurate." After hearing this, Lin Tian spent nearly a stick of incense explaining the name of the realm on the profound heaven continent to the black shadow. The black shadow nodded, and then said, "It seems that my strength should be between the half-emperor and the martial saint." "Half-emperor? Martial saint?" Lin Tian's expression changed from curiosity to shock. "Senior, don't scare me, I don't have this kind of strength." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a black shadow. He spread his hands and explained helplessly, I mean my previous realm should be between half-emperor and martial saint. I didn't say that now, my current realm should be between Wuzong and martial venerable. Haiying didn't hide it and said it directly. After all, in his opinion, it could be hidden for a while, but not for a lifetime. The black shadow also has eyes, and having the power to threaten him means that there must be a powerful protector behind Lin Tian. The black shadows doing this can be regarded as a gesture to the people behind Lin Tian. Then your current strength has already posed a threat to me, Lin Tian joked. Lin Tian discovered that Haiying was not that bad, and he gradually understood his character through his conversation with Haiying. The black shadow nodded, I can indeed threaten you, but you also have something that can threaten me. If we threaten each other like this, doesn't it mean that it's better if we don't do anything? What you said is quite interesting, Lin Tian smiled. Then he asked again, Senior, I would like to ask again, who sealed you? With such a strong strength, shouldn't it be the martial emperor who sealed you? The black shadow nodded and said, Yes, I was indeed sealed by the powerful martial emperor you know, but it was not one, but 3 powerful people who sealed me. Otherwise, how could my strength have fallen to this level in these 3 eras? Then he sighed again. 3 eras are indeed enough for a pig to become a martial emperor, and even a legendary immortal is possible. As for why the martial emperor wanted to seal the half-emperor, it was because of the cultivation method. The cultivation method 3 epochs ago was different from now. Now you can kill him directly, but you couldn't before because you couldn't kill him at all, so you could only seal him. But the reason why the seal is a seal is to completely put you to sleep. During the process of sleeping, your lifespan will not change, your realm will not improve, and it will even slowly decline, not much different from a dead person. Hearing Haiying sigh, Lin Tian had the idea in his mind to abduct Haiying. Although Haiying's strength is not what it used to be, the current martial arts strength is enough. If Haiying can slowly regain his strength, wouldn't he make a fortune? Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 38. Although I think so, how can I get him to follow voluntarily? Lin Tian stroked his chin and pondered. Xueling beside her looked at Lin Tian's contemplative look as if she had noticed something. He thought to himself, Brother Lin, you have helped Linger so many times, let Linger help you this time. Immediately, Xueling's ice blue eyes glowed with white light, and a voice sounded in Haiying's mind. Is your name Yan Ling? The shadow frowned and said secretly, Who are you and why do you know my name? This voice shocked Yan Ling, and he even changed his name to me. My name is Xueling and I am from the same era as you. Maybe you have never heard of me, but you must know the Xueling Ice Code. Snow Spirit Ice Codex. Yan Ling looked surprised but a little disbelieving. In his memory, the Snow Spirit Ice Code had long been destroyed in the Battle of the 8 Emperors, and he had witnessed the scene with his own eyes back then. He angrily yelled at the voice in his mind, Impossible, the Snow Spirit Ice Code has been destroyed long ago. How can you still be alive? Who are you? Xueling was not surprised by his expression, after all, it was really hard to believe. This is equivalent to you being shot to death with your own eyes, how could you still be alive? I know you don't believe it, but I did survive. I didn't die completely back then, but just like you, I slept for 3 epochs before slowly waking up. Not only did I survive, I also transformed into a human body and lived well. The woman in front of you is my current body. In the past, the Emperor rank technique could be destroyed, but there was a chance of survival, and this is the case with the current Snow Spirit. After hearing this, Yan Ling raised his head and looked at the woman behind Lin Tian. Then why did you come to talk to me? Xueling snorted and smiled, then do you want to regain your strength? Of course I do. That's right. I'll make a deal with you. I want you to protect this man for 5 years, and I'll help you regain your strength. What do you think? These words made Yan Ling a little confused. As far as he knew, there was no record in the Snow Spirit Ice Code that there was a way to restore strength, unless it was to sacrifice one's own life force. Besides, the background behind Lin Yun shouldn't be worthy of his protection, right? But he didn't ask about it. Then Yan Ling paused and looked at Xue Ling with some disbelief. Are you going to sacrifice your own life force to help me regain my strength? Yes, this condition is very favorable. This made Yan Ling puzzled and asked, but why is this? Could it be that this man has helped you several times, and you have to sacrifice your life to help him? Xue Ling chuckled and shook her head. You don't understand. Yan Ling seemed to have guessed something and asked tentatively, is it possible that you are in love with this person? You must know that you are the legendary Snow Spirit Ice Codex. Everyone in the world wants to have you, but you are here for a man. I want to ask you, is it worth sacrificing your life for sex? A blush appeared on Xue Ling's face, but she hid it again. Without speaking, he just looked at Lin Tian affectionately and said slowly, he has rescued me from danger many times, so of course I will help him this time. After that, Yan Ling didn't say much, sighed secretly, and shook his head. The conversation between the two did not last long, and Lin Tian did not pay attention to their conversation or expressions. He was still standing there thinking about how to make Yan Ling follow him without any scruples. Yan Ling looked at Lin Tian and said to himself, I really don't know how your boy attracted the admiration of Xue Ling Bing Code to make her willing to sacrifice her life. Then Yan Ling slowly spoke to Lin Tian, little brother, I wonder if you can let me follow you to get familiar with the current environment of Profound Heaven continent. Really or not? I just thought about how to get him to follow voluntarily, but now it's better for him to say it himself. Lin Tian didn't believe it but was a little excited. Then Lin Tian suppressed his excitement and looked at Yan Ling and smiled, senior can naturally follow the junior, and the junior has to rely on the senior. Ha ha ha. Yan Ling pretended to laugh for the sake of performing the trick. This is easy to say, this is easy to say. In that case, let's leave the cave now. Well, I don't have any objections, but senior, shouldn't you change your appearance? Lin Tian nodded and looked at Yan Ling and said. After all, Yan Ling looks a bit scary now. If he were taken out and seen by others, he would definitely be called a monster. I forgot about this. Yan Ling slapped his head and immediately a spiritual power enveloped him. Yan Ling changed from a dark appearance to an old man wearing a green robe with half white hair and beard. How about it, just like me, that's it? Lin Tian nodded and said yes. Then he took Xue Ling's thin hand and walked out of the cave. During this period, he also looked inside other caves for a while and found a heavenly rank low-grade martial arts suppressing demon palm and a long knife. At this time, Li Yan, wearing a grey robe, was sitting cross-legged in the open space outside the cave. This person was the old man in grey robe from before. Tread. 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 The sound of footsteps made Li Yan open his eyes. If what I expected is true, the head of the family should kill that kid. He immediately stood up and prepared to greet the head of the family. Unfortunately, it was Lin Tian and the others who were waiting. You're not dead yet, Li Yanmu looked shocked. These words made Lin Tian feel a little funny and said, what, I didn't let you down. Impossible, where are the family master and the others? Li Yan shook his head and said excitedly. If you miss them so much, then go down and accompany them. Immediately, he cupped his hands to Yan Ling and said, I'm sorry, senior. It's okay, just an ant. As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of spiritual power appeared in Yan Ling's hand, and it hit Li Yan's head as fast as a flying arrow, causing him to disappear into ashes. In his eyes, this kind of ant is no different from a dead person. He can kill this person with just one look. Killing him with spiritual power is just a little fun. Seeing that Li Yan was dead, Yan Ling said to Lin Tian, "Okay, little brother Lin, let's go. I still have to see what the profound heaven continent looks like now." "Don't worry, Senior Yan, the current profound heaven continent will not let you down." Then, under the leadership of Lin Tian, the two walked out of the monster mountains and headed for the Li family's residence. The reason why he went to the Li family was because Lin Tian heard Qin Xian say that if a force is chasing you and nagging you, there is no need to let him go. Kill him as soon as possible to save more trouble later. This sentence is indeed correct. You must know the meaning of this sentence: if the spring breeze blows, it will grow again. Lin Tian, who was walking on the road, looked into the distance and his eyes gradually became cold. In the process of his experience, Lin Tian also understood some truths. And the Li family in Black Cloud City didn't know that a crisis of extinction was about to sweep over them. They are still waiting for the good news of the family head. Only in the Li family ancestral hall, a pair of slightly wrinkled eyes opened their eyes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Rebirth of Fantasy, Obtain the Sect System. Author, Red General. Chapter 39. Western Region. A majestic and huge city covering thousands of miles is stationed here. On the city wall are written the four characters Dragon Flying and Phoenix Dancing. Wuyu, an ancient city. In the sky above the city, hundreds of large and small spirit boats were constantly shuttled back and forth through the magic circle. And among hundreds of spirit boats, a spirit boat with the word Xian written on it stopped in mid-air. According to the rules, this could not be stopped, but some discerning people discovered that the spirit boat was at the peak of the profound level, which meant that the people in this spirit boat were not easy to mess with and had no choice but to change directions. "Master Xiao, we have now reached the territory of Wuyu, an ancient city in the western region. Do you think we should go down now or what?" In the Lingzhou hall, Ling Gudi stepped forward and asked Xiao Ran, who was practicing, with his hands raised. Hearing the voice of Ling Gu from outside, Xiao Ran opened his eyes, stopped practicing, looked at him and said slowly, "Now that we're here, let's get down." Seeing this, Ling Gu nodded and walked out of the hall. After Ling Gu left, Xiao Ran waved his hand, and the spirit boat slowly descended and stopped in an open space that could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. There are dozens of other spirit boats parked in the open space, with goods piled up on them. Vendors of all sizes set out their goods and shouted loudly. Some were selling elixirs, some were selling spirit weapons, and some were even selling beautiful women. If you look carefully, you will find that there is a martial sovereign realm powerhouse on the top of each spiritual boat, and even half-step martial arts masters are not rare. It is rumored that the ancient city of Wuyuan in the western region was founded by 3 martial arts experts. I don't know if this is true. Of course it's true. Not only are they powerful, they also have great business acumen. You should understand when you take a look at the trading office in Wuyu, an ancient city where people come and go. 2 powerful martial sovereign men from the outer realm were sitting in a tea shop and communicating, and these words happened to be heard by the Linggu people who had just gotten off the boat. 3 martial venerables, Linggu frowned slightly. This is not good news for them. Although there is little fighting and killing in the western region, I am not sure some people like this. Generally speaking, in the western region, as long as you don't anger others casually, there are very few wars. But this time they were here to recruit well-qualified disciples, so it was inevitable that they would not touch the interests of others. Thinking of this, Ling frowned slightly. This is equivalent to you, a general, going to someone else to recruit troops. Although there is no hatred between the 2 families, what if it happens? You can't tell for sure. At this moment, Xiao Ran walked down from the spirit boat and saw Ling Gu standing there in a daze. He couldn't help but asked in confusion, "What's going on?" Li Qingxian on the side reacted and told Xiao Ran what had just happened. Oh, Xiao Ran's eyes flashed and he was thinking. After a moment, he said, these three martial venerables are indeed a threat to us, but the threat is not very big. After hearing this, Ling Gu asked, is it possible that Master Xiao has some idea? Xiao Fen shook his head, I can't think of any way. If they really want to fight us, then just fight. These words made Ling Gu a little worried. But, Master Xiao cannot afford to fight with our current strength. We are almost alone here. Without the sect master, it is really. At this point, Ling Gu didn't want to continue talking, but what he said was indeed correct. He was the only one with the highest strength now, and the strength of the others was too low. If there is a forced conflict, it is not even necessary for the three lords to take action personally. They only need to send 5 or 6 Wuzong to destroy them. Unless Ling Gu's strength returns to that of a martial venerable, not to mention 3 martial venerables, even a powerful semi-saint Ling Gu will have the confidence to dare to fight. Of course Xiao Ran knew Ling Gu's worries and understood what he said. But how could he have no backup plan? Otherwise, he wouldn't have said dare to fight so lightly. Then he patted his shoulder and said softly, relax, elder, we are all a family. I will not let you die. I still have a backup to deal with the 3 of you. Otherwise, how could I possibly be in Yun Dan Feng Qing, to say this? Hearing this, Ling Gu felt relieved for a while, exhaled and patted his chest and said, Master Xiao, can you finish your speech next time? You really scared me. Ling Gu didn't think that Xiao Ran lied to him. Since he said he had the means, he must have it. Don't forget Xiao Ran's identity. He is the great emperor of Tianlong. Why would a powerful martial emperor lie to him? Xiao Ran didn't say much, waved his hand to reassure him and said, okay, let's start recruiting disciples now. Don't delay. I feel that there are a few good seedlings nearby, and one of them even I want to take on disciple. Oh, Master Xiao is actually interested in someone. Ling Gu frowned slightly, then looked at the 4 people behind him and said, then let's start as soon as possible. Take out the things you prepared in advance. Yes. Boom. A wooden table with spiritual energy and a 1-meter-sized stone. The wooden table is used for registration, and the stone is used to test qualifications. After all, the appearance still has to be displayed. Immediately, the strength of the Ling Gu Yuzong was no longer hidden and was directly released on the spot. Of course, it was only limited to the range of the Ling Zhou. After all, they were here to recruit disciples, not to provoke public anger. Ling Gu released his coercion in order to scare some young people from coming to look for trouble, otherwise he would not bother to release it. The strong men on the nearby spirit boat felt the pressure and understood that it was declaring sovereignty and warning them. Then they closed their eyes and pretended that nothing happened. This is not always the case here. Then Ling Gu wrapped his voice with spiritual power and said to the people passing by, everyone, I am Ling Gu, the great elder of Profound Heaven section. This time I am here to recruit disciples under the order of the sect master. Anyone who is interested can come, regardless of qualifications. No matter what, you can accept it. The sound was not loud but resounded in everyone's ears. This voice also attracted some desperate and down-to-earth people, and of course it also attracted the attention of a powerful force. What kind of force is this? Why have I never seen it before? Not far above the Tianqian Arc, an old man wearing a white robe with white beard and hair stood in mid-air and said in confusion, with a man and a woman standing behind him. The man is handsome and the woman is as beautiful as a flower. You can tell how extraordinary they are at a glance. It must be a big force from some domain coming. The man bowed and responded. Master, do you want me to go and say hello? The woman asked with a smile. You little girl, you are still teasing me as a teacher. Do you want to be beaten? The old man laughed angrily and hit the woman on the head with his hand. Why? It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. The woman covered her head with her hands and hid while shouting, Master, I was wrong. Snort. The old man seemed to have lost his anger and stopped hitting her on the head. The woman ran to the man aggrievedly, held her arms and looked at him with tearful eyes. Then she leaned all over the man's chest. This feeling made the man a little embarrassed. He didn't know where to put his hands, so he could only let the woman do this. The old man on the side also knew the relationship between the two brothers and sister and didn't say much. He put his hands behind his hands and looked forward, not knowing what he was thinking. After a while, the woman returned to her original position with a slightly red face. I wonder if you are recruiting disciples, a thin, pale man asked in a hoarse voice. The four of them looked at each other and then placed the stone in front of the man and asked him to put his hand on it. The man nodded laboriously and put his hand up. In an instant, the stone glowed with golden light and four words appeared. Rebirth of Fantasy, obtain the Sect system. Author, Red General. Chapter 40. High-grade qualification, the four people were shocked. Ling was also attracted and asked, "What's going on?" The four people quickly raised their hands and replied, "Elder Ling, this person's qualifications have been identified as high grade." Oh. Then Ling looked at the thin man and asked softly, "Little brother, what is your name and where are you from? Can you tell me?" It's not that high-grade qualifications are so good in Ling's eyes, he has even seen supreme grade saint grade. But he felt like he was a little lucky. Not long after he recruited a disciple, he met someone with high-grade qualifications. However, Ling didn't bother to think too much, and it was very good to have high-grade qualifications. Nowadays, almost all sects have middle and low-grade qualifications. There are too many disciples with low-grade qualifications and only a few high-grade qualifications. Ah! The man was a little nervous when he heard this and looked up timidly. What he saw in front of him was a middle-aged man. Ling, who was wearing a Qingxian Taoist robe, was looking at him with a smile on his face. The kind face couldn't help but make his heart soften slightly. But he slowly lowered his head. He knew that this person's temperament was extraordinary at first glance. He could never catch up with it and couldn't afford to offend him. His inferiority complex made him stand there motionless. There is really nothing we can do about it. A person with low self-esteem will indeed have this kind of mentality when meeting someone with a good temperament. It wasn't until a strong man behind him told him to hurry up that he came back to his senses, nodded and bowed to the person behind him, and apologized, saying sorry and sorry. However, Ling was a little unhappy when he heard this, and frowned slightly. It was not that he was small, but that in a fantasy world, strong people were talking to each other. How could a weak person interrupt? This strong man is like this now. A pair of sharp eyes stared directly at the strong man. The strong man was a little scared by these eyes, as if he knew what he said was wrong. He could only lower his head as much as possible and kept praying in his heart, don't kill me, or something like that. Ling was not a fussy person either. He glanced at him and said nothing. Then he smiled and asked the man again, "Little brother, how about you follow me from now on?" This sentence made the man stunned. He didn't understand why such a person would accept a waste like him as his apprentice. In fact, in Ling's eyes, he felt that this person was so similar to himself back then, with the same inferiority complex and the same cowardice. A trace of cold sweat broke out on the back of the strong man standing behind him. He was afraid that the man would retaliate against him. When everyone was still watching the man, he ran away quickly. The three people in mid-air also saw this scene. This boy's talent is indeed excellent. If he is trained properly, he can indeed become a strong man. But unfortunately, he is too timid and cowardly. The old man nodded at first, and then shook his head in disappointment. However, the woman on the side was a little surprised and said, "But this profound heaven sect must be very lucky. Not long after recruiting disciples, I met someone with high-grade qualifications. The man smiled and said, "Luck is something that cannot be seen or touched. Everything depends on God's will." "That's right." The old man nodded and looked at the man with a smile. "Luck does rarely happen to us, but it really depends on God's will. But it happens a lot to a certain type of person." "A kind of person? I wonder if Master can tell who this person is," the two asked curiously. The old man looked at them and smiled. "That is the legendary Son of Fortune. Only the Son of Fortune can have great luck. The luck that happens to ordinary people is simply ordinary for them." The woman was slightly surprised. "Ah, is Master so powerful? If you say so, can they become powerful martial emperors in an instant?" When the old man heard this, he shook his head. "I don't know about this. After all, I only saw it in ancient books. I don't know whether Son of Fortune really exists or not." "All right." The woman seemed a little disappointed. "Master, please bow to me, my disciple." The man knelt down on his knees and bowed to Lingu without any further hesitation. Seeing the man kowtow 3 times and his forehead was bleeding, Lingu quickly told him to stop. Then he helped him up with both hands. "Disciple, get up." "Thank you, Master." "Okay, you haven't told me yet, what is your name?" "Master, my disciple's name is Zhao Lei said respectfully. "So do you live here?" Lei shook his head. "I don't live here, I was abducted here." At this point, Lingu's face first changed from a smile to a scowl. He frowned and asked, "Who abducted you here?" "You told me, Master, and I will go and get it now." These words moved Lei. He hadn't felt cared for by others for a long time, and his eyes were slightly moist. "Master, this force is very strong, and the people above him are the people around the 3 deities in Wuyu, an ancient city. I also relied on their carelessness to escape, otherwise my disciple might have died inside." 3 people, Lingu thought for a while, then looked at Zhao Lei and said, "Master, I will take you to see someone first. If he is willing to help, let alone destroy that force, there is no need to panic even if the 3 people come in person." "Good." Zhao Lei was then taken to the Tianqian Arc by Lingu, and the 2 of them walked slowly towards Xiao Ran's palace. After a few breaths, the 2 arrived at the main hall. Looking at Xiao Ran, who was refining pills at the side, Lingu thought for a while and then said, "Master Xiao, I have something to tell you." Xiao Ran, who was refining alchemy, raised his eyebrows. Opening his eyes, he looked at the person behind Lingu. "If you have anything to say, just say it here." Lingu nodded and then told Xiao Ran everything that Zhao Lei just said. Xiao Ran just nodded and said nothing. Using the seals with both hands, a raging fire burst out of the pill furnace, and the next moment there was a bang and 12 pill pattern-filled pills flew into Xiao Ran's hands. A porcelain bottle appeared in Xiao Ran's hand, and then he put all the elixirs into it. "If it's true as you say, leave now," Xiao Ran said directly without any nonsense. Lingu exhaled and clasped his fists in thanks, then "Thank you so much, Master Xiao. If Master Xiao has anything to do in the future, you can come to me directly and I will do my best to help you. It's okay, we're all from the same sect, it's just a trivial matter." Immediately stepping out, Lingu saw this and wrapped Zhao Lei with spiritual power and followed. People outside were still queuing up to test their qualifications when a whirlwind of spiritual power suddenly passed over their heads, followed by Master Lingu and his disciples. The 2 brothers Qingfeng and Qingxian, who were located below, did not know why, and Wu Huai also stood there blankly until a voice sounded in the minds of several people. "You continue to recruit disciples, Xiao Feng, and I will go out for a while." The 3 people in mid-air also saw this scene. "Master, what happened to them? Why are they running so fast? It feels like something big happened." The old man shook his head to express that he was unclear, but he actually already had the answer in his heart. "Master, why don't we follow up and take a look, the man on the side said softly. The old man nodded slightly.